Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day to everyone. Today we will be presenting on the topic Leadership in the Education Reform Addressing Learning Gaps and the Digital Divide Post-Pandemic. Our focus is on how leadership at a various level, from national ministry to our local school leaders, play a crucial role in responding to educational challenges during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in a rural Malaysia. We'll examine the leadership strategy implemented, the challenges faced, and a proposed data-driven solution. Our discussion is guided by three key leadership models: transformational, servants, and distributed leadership. With that, let's begin our presentation. The COVID-19 pandemic was more than a health crisis. It was a shockwave that disrupted education system globally, including in Malaysia. Overnight, we shift from classroom to home-based and online learning, but for many, especially in a rural area, this transition revealed an uncomfortable truth: several digital and learning gaps. In the face of these challenges, leadership become more than a title, it's become action. This presentation explores how different levels of leadership, federal school and a community work to overcome this crisis and ensure that learning continues no matter the obstacles.
Background of the issue. When the pandemic hit, more than 5 million students in Malaysia had to quickly shift to online learning. The Ministry of Education introduced platforms like Google Classroom and Dilemma to support this, but this shift exposed deep inequalities, especially between students in cities and thus in rural areas. A survey in 2020 showed that only 6% of students had a personal computer, while over one-third had no device at all. In rural states like Sabah, Sarawak, Kelantan, and Pahang, students struggle with slow internet, poor electricity, and lack of digital skills. Some even had to climb trees or walk far just to get a signal to attend class. Teachers in these areas also faced challenges because many were not trained in using digital platforms effectively. To address this, the government launched programs like Dilemma and Jendela. Dilemma provide learning resources and Jendela aim to improve internet access in rural areas. However, these solutions are not enough. As of 2024, the Ministry of Education admits there's still a big gap in education skills between urban and rural students. That's why leadership is so important, not just at the national level, but in schools and local communities too. We need leaders who understand these local issues, can provide support on the ground, and push for long-term inclusive reform. So, bringing the learning gap is not just about giving device or internet. It's real test of leadership in our education system.
I will continue my part, which is related theory or model. So for the first one is transformational leadership. This style is about inspiring positive change during COVID-19. School leaders in Malaysia show this by guiding teachers and students to adapt through online platforms like Dilemma and PDPR. In remote areas, they use printed modules and mobile classroom, proving how transformational leaders solve problems and motivate others. Next is servant leadership. This type puts students' needs first. During the pandemic, some teachers show care by delivering materials to students' home, offering flexible schedules, and checking on their well-being. This caring approach builds trust. The Madani Education Plan also reflects servant leadership by focusing on students' welfare and fairness. And the last leadership style is distributed leadership. This style shares leadership among principals, teachers, parents, and even the community. During COVID-19 in Malaysia, schools worked together to support students. In rural areas, local groups and NGOs help by setting up learning centers and providing digital tools. This teamwork makes schools more flexible and resilient.
Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. I am Syuhada Adika binti Muhammad Sabri. My meeting number 298-63. Now, I would like to move on to part 4.0, which focus on the key challenges of the issue. During the COVID-19 pandemic, several problems in the education system became more visible, especially for students in vulnerable groups. In this part, I will highlight the main challenges that we face. Let's talk about one major issue which is the digital divide between urban and rural students in Malaysia. In 2023, rural students scored just 3.24 in the digital competency score, which is lower than the national average of 3.31. That may seem small, but it speaks volume. In places like Pita Sabah, many students still do not have device and internet connection. Almost none. In fact, that 12% of rural homes still have no internet at all. So even students do get a device, they can't fully join online learning, and that's a huge problem. It is making it harder for rural students to catch up with their urban peers. This gap is real and it needs to be closed fast. Another major problem we often forget is digital skill among teachers, especially in the rural area. Urban teachers usually pick up online tools quickly, but rural teachers, many are still struggling. A 2023 survey showed that only 58% of teachers and just 2% have advanced digital skill. That is really worrying. These teachers are expected to create engaging lessons, give instant feedback, and guide students online, but most have not been properly trained to do all that. As a result, we can see that rural students get left behind and the education gap just keeps getting wider. One big challenge in rural education is poor digital infrastructure. Yes, we can see that the government introduced the Jendela program to improve 4G coverage, but many rural areas still struggle with slow and unstable internet. In fact, 40% of rural communities still don't have regular 4G and some even lack basic electricity. We can see that places like Pita Sabah, internet speed can be as low as 1 Mbps, way too slow for online classes or downloading materials. So, students often wait for page to load or miss lesson entirely. This makes learning frustrating and puts rural students even further behind the urban peer. That's all for me. Thank you.
Next, my name is Anis Aina Shazlin binti Mama Anas, number matric 299504. The solution or suggestion that I can give to over the problem is firstly, expanding digital infrastructure in rural areas. One of the most critical solutions to addressing the learning gaps and digital divide in post-pandemic education reform is the expansion of digital infrastructure in rural areas. During the pandemic, many students in rural and remote communities were unable to participate in remote learning due to lack of internet connectivity, digital device, and reliable electricity. Leadership at both national and local levels must prioritize investments in broadband networks, mobile connectivity, and sustainable power sources to bridge this gap. By improving access to digital infrastructure, students in rural areas can be included in national education efforts, enabling participation in online classes, access to educational content, and communication with teachers and peers. Next, implementation blended learning models, a practical and sustainable solution to bridge the learning gaps and address the digital divide in rural areas post-pandemic is the implementation of blended learning models. Blended learning combines traditional face-to-face instruction with digital learning methods, allowing students to benefit from both in-person guidance and the flexibility of accessing learning materials through technology. This approach is particularly beneficial in rural contexts, where inconsistent internet connectivity and lack of a digital device can limit the effectiveness of fully online learning. Blended learning also supports differentiated instruction, enabling teachers to personalize learning experience based on student performance and access levels. Leadership efforts should focus on training teachers in blended methods, designing inclusive curricula, and developing monitoring tools to assess learning outcomes. Moreover, partnerships with local organizations can help deliver materials and set up community learning hubs where students can access digital content in shared space. Another better solution to addressing learning gaps and the digital divide in rural areas post-pandemic is strengthening teacher training in digital methods. The student shift to remote learning revealed that many educators
particularly in rural settings where unprepared to use digital tools effectively. This lack of preparedness contributes to remote learning revealed that many educators, particularly in rural settings, were unprepared to use digital tools effectively. This lack of preparedness contributes inconsistent teaching quality and hindered student engagement and achievement. Effective leadership must prioritize continuous professional development that equips teachers with the skills to integrate technology into instruction, manage virtual classrooms, and use digital resources to support diverse learning needs.
In conclusion, the pandemic didn't just disrupt education, it exposed it a deepest crack, but it also showed us that with the right leadership, those cracks can be filled. The road to education equity isn't just paved with more device or better internet, it paved with a leadership that is transformational, innovation, servant in heart and distribute in a practice. Malaysia's futures in education depends not only on policies but on leaders who are willing to listen, adapt, and act. Because leadership isn't just a support system, it's the driving force that shapes how far and how fast we can close the education gaps.